Have you seen how some programs seem to uh, throw away some of its features for some kind of mind game, or maybe some simplification priorities that get stuck in the head of the people that make this kind of decision? For example, the Windows uh, recorder that I used to use on Windows XP was much more full of features, even though those were basic features. It was with more features than the one in Windows 7, and um, something similar also happened to Microsoft with Paint. And this is the kind of thing that's related to the subject of today, that is is supposed to be at least theoretically connected with the subject of yesterday. Yesterday's subject was about commonplace distractions in the cybernetic environment. And going beyond that, there is the acceptance of a featureless approach to software progression. So software is full of features, sometimes annoying features that nobody gets to use, and it's supposed to have a psychological effect on you. Make it look like it's complicated, or that the developer tried to do something. And you can think of many features that you would like in one of them, and in one of these softwares, and you don't get to see them very often, or they are in a very non-usual place, or you have to do some kind of arbitrary work to get them. What if you expand this view to other things? You have to do homework, and basically you should be able to see what's important to the discipline. For the test, for example, you can imagine, wow, this is going to be in the test, this isn't, otherwise I wouldn't be learning anything, because my experience says that the teacher likes to go deep on this side of the book. Basically, what if the features that are left out, or the chapters that are left out from the test, are very important, and the test is supposed to select people instead of test if people are able to reproduce what they learn. Say that you were accepted in a university that has a very simple rule, that for every class only half of the students are able to pass, and the other half has to drop out. It's a very extreme situation, and it's also very similar to what you get anyway. If that wasn't the case, if all students were passing their classes, the school then would have to create a new tactic that would eliminate half of the students. And they could do this by taking away features that are useful, but instead not to be seen as useful by the people that teach you, and they must be seen actually as a waste of time, and you should be interested in the application of these things and not these things themselves. And then they are removed from the class. People are selected on a basis that would require their knowledge. What about this applied to the market? Marketplace has a selective principle that is likely to reward the first instead of half the people. And the first is probably biased because there is something that seems to be basically about getting lucky on deals and opportunity, and it's mostly not a very direct correlation with intelligence. And if you remove the features within a competition, knowing that you're going to win anyway, then the product that you're selling gets passed on. And if you go and expand this to the psychology of the modern human, something similar happens. There is a progression in which features that were otherwise useful for your younger version, and also let me remind you that your younger version had less brain power than you, and at the same time they had to compensate for that. And you should instead see their difficulties as subjective instead of objective. Subjective in a way that the difficulty has value relative to them, and even if what they're doing is easy to you, you have to consider that it's not easy for them, and they have to come up with a solution that results in a good result. And since they don't have the brain power or they don't have the muscle power, they create another feature that might get the result. And this can happen all the way to old age, because you probably want more things than you can get from your own basic ability. So you need features that are not easily found on the mental spectrum, on the mental panel. So you want to activate something that you don't even know exists. You've never seen it before. And at the same time, you want to remove things that you're not using. So it seems to be one force going for the good way, and the other force asking for efficiency, which might be the bad way. So it's like making a choice between efficiency and something better. It's very counterintuitive. And since this kind of conflict happens, what happens as a result of that is you are left in the world thinking a lot. Basically, you are thinking because you are creating an algorithm, which is the feature. Of course, if your mind is not able to process something, then it has to create a mechanism, which might be an algorithm that yields a solution. And it's this kind of compensation that can be distracting when you're trying to learn from a lecture. And since this process is non-stop and you are likely to be rewarded by it after a long time, then it needs to be regulated, right? And what's going to regulate it? One of the proposals for this problem is to regulate it with meditation. And of course, this is very likely to be a bad solution, because you need to find a correlation between meditation and people from Asia, for example, and the kind of result that you expect, and it's not something that you can find. Basically, you're trying to be a physicist, a Western hero, and at the same time you're using an Eastern method to arrive at that result, which is a paradox. And of course, this leads to the question, so what's the solution? Well, the solution might be something that I'm using right now, and you as well. You're trying to understand what I'm saying, and since we already established that understanding is intelligence, and that for intelligence you need to have access to the stream of words that I'm saying in the right order, or at least in an order that's good enough, then of course the approach is to increase focus, but not through meditation, because who says that the lack of focus is because of the inability of letting a string of words through your ears and into your brain? That's not the problem. I'd say the problem is that you are not processing the things. It's a problem that's related to processing the things that you hear, and not the hearing apparatus itself. So my conclusion is that you should be able to tell if something is true or not every time it passes through your brain, and the lack of this judgment is what causes the lack of understanding.